Santa Khurai is a very long-term friend and sister of mine from the northeast of the subcontinent. Santa is a Manipuri indigenous Nupi Manbi, which roughly translates as a transgender woman, for lack of a better term in the English language. This is in Meitei Long, which is her mother tongue. She's a writer, activist, and artist. Her work is mainly focused on the inclusion of transgender people in the socio-economic and political realms. Her work is focused on the northeast states of the subcontinent, like I said. Apart from the immediate needs of trans people, like state welfare, facilitating legal and name change, training activities, advocating with different states in the region for the recognition of transgender rights. She's also involved in international and national level advocacy for the recognition and representation of Northeast indigenous queer sociocultural rights. The translated book Yellow Sparrow is her forthcoming book, and I can guarantee you that it will be brilliant, and you all should grab a copy when that comes out. And is a collection of her memoirs. Her poetry was also published recently in the anthology, South Asian Queer Poetry Anthology, which is called The World That Belongs to Us, which was published by HarperCollins in 2020. This is available online, and all of you can definitely go and order a copy online. Over to you, Santa. Oh, and
Thank you,
sorry, before I forget again, I forgot to announce this. Please don't record anything. I know our panelists are brilliant and you want to keep this forever, everything that's been said here, but we are recording it, and we'll make sure that after we get the appropriate consent, we'll put it up on the website for all of you to access later. Thank you.
Thank you, Z. Thank you so much. It's lovely to hear from you, giving my brief introduction. So my first presentation, I will be giving two perspectives. One is how language disparity stood as a threat to the queer diversity. So the importance of knowing and understanding of the relationship between gender and sexuality identity and the various native terminology has not been addressed at large scale at the limelight. The non-recognition of the local terminology in the international and national sexual orientation and gender identity human rights movement is a failure to see the diversity in the community's culture. This has also weakened the networking system, which is the pillar to unification. Moreover, the international and national methodology that have been implied to the SOSI project can also be one reason that fails to enhance the spirit to collectivization, properly representation, and amplifying the voice of the queer rights. In every unconventional gender and sexuality individual's life, the first term that strikes when they came out is the LGBT, is the term LGBT. Knowingly or unknowingly, they chose one term from the four. However much individual or community in the grassroots, remote areas, and in conflict society and family often find themselves out of the popular nomenclature LGBT. Their real lives and experiences often clashes with the conventional definition. The clashes and the dilemmas relate with the embodied social and cultural paradigm. In short, though LGBT stand as a collective identity for unconventional gender and sexuality peoples, it is difficult for many of us to accommodate ourselves to this popular typology. The failure to the recognition of native terminology and diverse reality has also resulted to misrepresentation, appropriation, and exclusion. Many of the global queer policies and programs seem to be developed based on the research finding comes from the mainstream LGBT narratives. It is fortunate that in the millennium, the community across the globe has been receiving knowledge, support, capacity, and empowerment through the existing support. However, the question is whether the collected data really enables to address the specific requirement of the community living in the remote areas. For instance, how do we provide legal and human rights literacy to the community who position in between law and society? How do we analyze the response of a ready-made questionnaires for the community who do not have the actual translation of sexuality in their native language? What sort of methodology is required to get into the narratives of community that transactional sex is considered neither existed nor a livelihood, but included in the pan-LGBT project? How do we engage with the society that queer peoples are discriminated, but not treated differently and live with the society? How do we politically articulate the friendly teasing, which is a socio-cultural part of a community which, according to the popular LGBT definition, can be tagged as discrimination? How do we deal with the queer people of a colonized state? Many a time, community in the remote place found themselves very disconnected with the language used by the outsiders in programs and events. They were not able to understand the context because they found it new to them and unable to accommodate in their existing knowledge and the tiny environment. The barriers have avoided themselves from those English-speaking peoples, Hindi-speaking peoples. It has also developed a sense of inferiority and surrendered themselves to lower position. The language barrier is one that creates class within the community and destroy relationship and connectivity. And many of us fail to recognize such dilemma and continue with their own agenda. For instance, a resource person explained the definition of LGBT in Manipur and many states in the Northeast. And in the Q&A session, the participants were asked to tell their identity, which they feel fit to the given nomenclature LGBT. Participants have blindly answered, I am lesbian, I am gay, I am bi, I am trans. And those answers has been counted the number of LGBT representation in the national and international reports. The question is how reliable is the data of the particular event? Based on the answer, the work module is developed. Then how can we make sure to produce a rational material out of the module for a comprehensive advocacy? So there shall be much more linguistic issues related with queer. The issues might be internalized or dumped over by the internationally standardized methodology or assimilated to the mainstream LGBT subject. The main concern of my presentation is to address the importance of developing queer methodology based on different ground reality so that the narratives of different queer culture and tradition do not get excluded from the mainstream LGBT subject. It also further aims to promote the recognition of queer peoples in the periphery with the inclusion of their narratives in the existing framework. So my next perspective is how we are dealing with our presentation in both national and international forum. We do face intersectional issues in many forums. So the issues are huge. The issues faced by the queer community from the Northeast region of India is very huge and we fail to address. The issues include non-trans inclusive education, health, social dilemma, and regressive national trans rule 2020. Of all the issues mentioned, the most threatening issues that the community in the region face is non-recognition of indigenous queer culture and identity at the national level. The crux of this non-recognition is the overshadowed of the minority trans by the majoritarian and the mainland popular trans culture and identity, Hijra, Kinnar, Sipsakti, so on. These are the burning issues that have been kept undercover and assimilated to the common agenda of trans rights movement. The less representation, misrepresentation, and non-participatory at the domestic and international discourse has led to the destruction of trans unification and to address the specific requirement of the indigenous queer community in many of the incipient trans domestic laws and policies. In general education curriculum, the narratives of the Northeast India are completely annihilated from the history. The challenges to greater representation and participation are less exposure, language, geographical barrier, limited resources, limited time frame. The stringent of Foreign Currency Regulation Act that stood as a barrier by the non-FCRA community-based organization is also one main challenge to empower the community. Due to the lack of the resources, the community in the Northeast region of India are not able to establish a very strong community network in the region. However, if there is resources to establish the common trans network in the region, then it will definitely help in community mobilization, relationship, research, empowerment, capacity building, and enable to present a collective voice at the national and international level from the Northeast community. So this network, the planned network, will also improve the community meeting, which is the foundational platform for a common understanding and aspiration. Through meeting, the community can have a cultural accents of diverse ethnicity, languages, and narratives. So like there can be story writing, simple research with open methodology, and also learning the importance of archiving trans document. When I say like open methodology, I meant to say like most of the methodology are based on the cis knowledge. So I think it's also important to open the community to come up with their own thoughts and ideas, so that we can collect their thoughts and ideas and develop into a methodology, which I think will be definitely relevant with the community in the working in the grassroots. And moreover, there is also no trans scholarly in the Northeast region of India, and has made it difficult to start doing groundwork. Therefore, if the community are able to get support to form a common network, and it will improve the community representation and participation in every forum. And the current political situation in India is severely affected to the human rights movement, queer human rights movement. And being a person living in the Northeast is again pushing to more marginalized position. Many of the human rights organizations, advocates, activists, and human rights defenders are under strict surveillance. There are many ways which the government is controlling over human rights related work. One example can be stringent over Foreign Currency Regulation Act, which forced to allot less than 20% of any total grant budget for the admin and office expenses. Even the language activist cannot be used in most of the proposal. Moreover, the present government is not supporting activism work. The recent changes it has impacted at most of the people working at the grassroots level in the periphery. And trans people in the periphery, on the other hand, are educationally, socially, and economically backward community. They are at the receiving end of such fascist role. So in order to enable to continue their activism work, we need to empower the community through different support. So I think it's a high time that people across the globe also, lend out their hands to support and reach out to the peoples who are living in the corners of the world, so that we can also collect different narratives from this unheard voice, and we could develop a very comprehensive methodology and comprehensive narratives for the queer future across the globe. Thank you, Z. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Santa, for that brilliantly done presentation. I know from personal conversations with Santa, she's said things like, I hate this word empowerment. So both in terms of form and content, Santa's presentation really talks to the impossibility